Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. First question comes from Adam Watson. First off, congrats on a year of Q&As. Thanks, friend. Second, when you are working on a campaign, do you try and make it so that everyone's stories have equal time in the spotlight, or just make sure that everyone has the same opportunity for the spotlight? What do you feel like is the difference between a person who is hogging the spotlight and someone who is just taking better advantage of their storyline? That is a great question. Love this. Ultimately, if players are not taking the bait for storylines that I make for their characters, I talk to them. Because in that moment, I'm worried that they're not having a good time. I try to create storylines that aren't catered to characters, they're catered to the people making those characters. Now, obviously, it does have to be both. The storyline should fit the character that you're making it for, but you also need to make sure that it fits the person that's playing the character. If the person playing the character isn't interested, obviously they're not going to engage. So yeah, I provide everyone with the same opportunities, but if one person has gone the entire campaign without ever taking those opportunities, then maybe there's a problem with the opportunities I'm presenting that player. So I talk to them. And from that conversation, we figure out how we can integrate this character better into the plot of the campaign. Now, I know that somebody out there is thinking, oh, well, why does it matter? It's just one person. But it really, really matters. It matters because D&D requires engagement. I've said this so many times. If you're not engaged, the game is going to absolutely fall apart pretty much 100% of the time. And for a lot of players, how into it they can get depends on the group that they're with. I talked to Momo O'Brien about this. She does a lot of LARP in D&D, and she can only really roleplay properly if other people are going to roleplay with her. She doesn't just want to do it alone with people who aren't really invested. And I think a lot of other roleplayers are like that. As for the Spotlight Hog question, I think that the main difference between someone who's just good at taking advantage of the storylines presented and a Spotlight Hog is somebody who takes the spotlight away from other players, who always wants to be in the limelight and doesn't let other people take that limelight for themselves. Pretty simple distinction, but an important one to make. Question from Yiee. What are the biggest problems you have run into when it comes to planning and writing for a campaign, and how do you overcome them? I think the biggest problem that I have encountered in my 4-ish years of playing D&D, the thing that stresses me out the most, and the thing that will drive me to almost cancel the entire game, is when I plan a session specifically around a player character, and that player can't show up. This problem is especially bad if we're in the middle of a story arc. Like, we've had 3 sessions with this player being very, very important. Their character is pretty relevant during this arc, and then we're at the finale, and right here at the session, they can't show. Or the night before, they tell me like, oh crap, they just called me into work, I'm super sorry, I can't show up. And it's right there. My heart sinks, my head hurts. I've planned everything around this player being here. They are the central focus, and they're not there. It just doesn't work. So how do I resolve that? Well, truth be told, I either delay the game, because that might be the best thing to do, or I delay not the session itself, but the in-game event. Like, for example, if it's all leading up to a climactic boss fight, just hold off on the boss fight for a little bit, put in a filler encounter that can set up a little bit of stakes, put in a side mission to help set up the boss fight. Stuff like that can help with that issue. But yeah, I've had to do multiple takes on this because I'm stuttering so much, because just talking about this, it really stresses me out, I'm not gonna lie. Now this, as well as all my D&D problems and many of my real life problems, are solved by one simple rule. Once the panic has seceded, I chill out. I sit down, I take a breather, and then I think, how can I solve this? There's no point in me thinking about, oh, what could have been, or why did this happen? Who cares? Doesn't matter. All that matters is solving this problem that I have right now. And honestly, for D&D, sometimes the solution will be delaying the session, sometimes the solution will be finessing some in-game writing, who knows. But the important thing is that I figure it out. Question from David Flint. How to help make players feel invested in NPCs that are meant to be important to their characters. In my campaign, in a session coming up, one of my players will run across a brother he didn't know he had, and basically the brother's going to turn out to be a bad guy. So, I'm kind of seeing 2 questions here. Number 1 is how to make an NPC that a player will care about, an NPC that's made for their storyline, and the second one is the whole thing with the brother. How to have a surprise twist that comes with that NPC. Now, question number 1. The basic premise for me, whenever I am making NPC for a player, I make the NPC for not the character, but the player. I make a character that the player will like. Now, obviously, people are going to embody their characters in various different ways. Some people are going to be masters at playing characters that are completely different from them. But the vast majority of D&D players, I don't think, can completely separate that. A lot of D&D characters have parts of us in them. It's very natural. For me, that is basically all my characters. All my characters are aspects of me. The things that I don't like as a person are probably going to be carried over into the characters that I play. So when I'm making NPCs for my player characters, I often will think about not only what the character would like, but what the player likes. One of my players, Kyla, is playing a character named Talia, a student at a magical school who dropped out. And she rolled really well for having a professor friend at the school. She rolled 2 nat 20s. So I wanted to make a character that she really liked. So I thought about what character would Talia, the character, and Kyla, the player, like. And I came up with a chipper but snarky necromancy professor with an affinity for pastels. I knew that Kyla, the player, would probably like that character, and if she didn't, I would talk to her about what I could do to subtly change her personality to make the character more amiable. That's basically how I do it. Now, as for surprising players, you have to be really careful. I think the only way those kind of twists work is if you have a player who is really invested in the story and knows how to roll with twists like that. A lot of D&D players aren't like that, and that's perfectly okay. You just need to make sure that the person on the other side of the table, the player you're springing this twist on, is ready for a twist like that, is prepared to engage in that kind of story. Because if they're not prepared to engage with that sort of twist, with that sort of dramatic storytelling, then it will really fall flat. Question from OK Mimi. A silly question, do you play Magic the Gathering? No. Question from Punk Rock Zoologist. What is a character type that keeps turning up in RPG horror stories but you'd love to see more players try to do well? And how do you think a player/group could take a normally problematic character type and play with them in a way that works in a group/campaign? Now, I'm going to start this off by saying you probably can't play the stereotypes. You can't play a lawful stupid paladin. You can't play a textbook edgelord from an RPG horror story. Those aren't going to work in most games. Instigatory edgelords that just kill everything and don't engage with the plot, yeah, that's cringe. Don't play as that, obviously. But can you play an edgy character? Yes. The whole point of the videos that I make where we analyze a problematic trope and make it into something better, the whole point is that we are changing it. We are shifting it to be something different. So you can't really play a lawful stupid paladin. You play a lawful paladin that has more interesting qualities than just being rigid and boring and telling all the players that they can't do something because it's against the light and the law. The trope that I see in RPG horror stories that I think could absolutely work in a game that a lot of people don't do, like, I'm gonna be honest guys, a lot of people do edgelords, a lot of people do good edgelords. Edgelord characters are pretty popular. I mean, just look at Caleb in Critical Role. There's so much fan art of that guy, and he is an edgelord. Or Percy. I mean, in Legend of Vox Machina, he is one of the more popular characters, if not the most popular character. And again, he's an edgelord. So yeah, I think edgelords are pretty popular as is. I think the naive kid is a trope that I really like. A lot of my characters have this sort of naive kid energy. Both Kalia and Caroline, 2 characters that were featured in previous videos, aren't exactly that character trope, but they definitely take elements from it. So yeah, that's one trope that I think could absolutely be made to work in a D&D game. I've done it before, and it was really fun. I think if you want a great example of this in action, Jestro in Critical Role is the perfect naive kid to me. Laura did a great job creating a character that was funny, but also the naivete of Jestro could be dramatic at times. Not so many times that became repetitive or grating, but enough that it was poignant. So yeah, there you go. Hope that whole ramble answered your question. Question from Nathan Kirk. How did you like Destiny's Witch Queen? Which queen are you talking about? We've got Marasa, we've got Savathun. I mean, is there a specific queen that you're... I'm just kidding. It's so stupid. I'm sorry, that was a really stupid joke. Anyway, point is, yes, the Witch Queen, Destiny 2's latest expansion that I spent so much of my Tuesday playing. Yeah, I had a great time. The Legendary campaign is incredible. I didn't have high expectations going into the campaign. Bungie makes okay Destiny 2 campaigns, nothing special at all. Shoot enemies, move through, not really difficult, you just bulldoze through it so you can get to the end game content. The campaign's a glorified tutorial. Here, the campaign was so fun. Mechanics that were simple but effective in making the campaign a bit more engaging. Challenge that felt so rewarding to get through. Tons of rewards to, reward you for getting through those challenges. I mean, the legendary difficulty that they gave us was incredible. The background footage is probably footage from the campaign, and I had a great time with this. The new Void 3.0 subclasses, the buffs to exotic weapons, all amazing, feels great. I feel powerful in this game. I feel rewarded for build crafting. For so long, I've just been using the same stuff over and over and over again because we were restricted to these little subclass trees, but now we can experiment and it feels so fun. The story is great. Destiny is finally having a good story in the game. The world building of Destiny has always been incredible, but now the story reflects the amazing world building that the writing team have implemented into this incredible world, and I am so excited for the future of Destiny. As you can see, I've had a great time. This Saturday, we've got the raid coming out, and I am also excited for that. I am not going to be participating in the day 1 raid race because unfortunately, I cannot dedicate an entire day to just playing Destiny as much as I wish I could. Taking Tuesday off to play Destiny already kind of messed up my work schedule a lot. I had so many late nights after that trying to catch up, but I think it was absolutely worth it. I had so much fun with the game, and I am looking forward to the future. Man, it just feels so good to say that. Question from Jestro Games. Has there ever been a post on RPG horror stories where the problem player replied in the comments? The stories are always from one perspective, but I'm just curious what it would be like to hear the Craig saga from Craig's perspective, you know? That rarely happens. I have seen it happen once. There was a DM who posted about a problem player. The player responded by posting about the DM actually being the problem. Now, there was a big part of me that wanted to cover that whole drama and situation because it was the only time I'd ever seen it happen. It is very rare. So the reason I didn't is because that whole situation opened up what CGP Grey calls the what is true dimension. We have no idea what is true. That's where errors in videos like the error catastrophicus come in, and I didn't want to open up the what is true dimension by delving into that story because how do we really know what is true? We have two perspectives, and yeah, I can analyze like the language of the people talking to figure out who's telling the truth, but honestly, it's all just hearsay essentially. I have no idea who's telling the truth, and therefore I can't really cover the story without, I think, sounding like a moron. There are definitely times where the OP is the actual problem player. I've covered a couple of them, but generally I don't love covering it because I think reading those stories, unless they have some sort of major lesson that can be learned, like the creepy PvP kill in the LARP horror story that I did with Momo O'Brien, or they're just funny, like the Stalker story on Legal Advice, those had some humor to them or a major lesson to learn. However, if the OP is just being generally irritating, I don't want to read it. It's not fun to me. Aside from situations like that, where the OP is just revealing themselves to be the problem, when two people are duking it out, again, the what is true dimension is opening up when that happens. At that point, we're questioning everything. Who's telling the truth? Who's lying? Which person is telling the correct version of events? Hell, we could even be asking if these people are even real at all. What if this is just one person doing a creative writing experiment for karma on Reddit? What if the person who's responding isn't even the real problem player? Do you see now why I don't like opening the what is true dimension?
Truth is a funny thing.
Not helping, Savathun. But yeah, there's my basic take. And even if I didn't care about opening up the what is true dimension, I don't even think it matters because, frankly, that kind of thing where the problem player responds, it pretty much never happens. And that is going to be it for today's episode of Q&Play. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then check out Tabletop Tavern Tips, where I go over tips for both DMs and players, old and new. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own questions or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, truth is a funny thing, to reference the what is true dimension, reference the game we're playing in the background, and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. There's a triple meaning this time. Well, anyway, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.